Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of Randall Kepner, who recently fell ill, and his doctors basically recommended him to fly, so he sends his apologies for not being able to make it. He has asked me to give this presentation instead. We at SA Capital is one of the early members of ANDI from Asia, and therefore I'll try my best to fill in for his shoes. But before I start, I'd just like to get make a survey from the audience. If, how many of you have heard of the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs? Could you raise your hands? Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're very and very new in East Asia, has more presence in South Asia and India, and its history also is quite young, and it was officially launched in 2009. Launched by its parent, which is the Aspen Institute, which is an international nonprofit organization that promotes enlightened leadership. It is a member-led organization. That's why Randall asked me to somehow give this on his behalf, since he's unable to do it. It's a member-led organization which has a network mainly of members that are investing money and expertise to propel entrepreneurship in the emerging markets. Our focus are the small, global, small growing businesses. And as this phrase encapsulates it from Angel Cabrera, who is the chair of the World Economic Forum Council on Entrepreneurship, only by letting millions of entrepreneurs try new ideas, to innovate, to create businesses that put those ideas to work in a competitive and open way. By doing those things, are we going to be able to tackle the world's big problems? So, we've heard a lot during the day and a half on some of these businesses. Some of you are very much involved in running them, or are directors in them, or shareholders in them, or stakeholders in them. Now, what ANDI does, that's our short form, is we are trying to identify common strategic challenges and opportunities facing the small and growing business sector. And based on these findings, we provide programs and services for our members in the sector as a whole. Now, just to give you an idea of the founding members, one of them is actually here in the panel with me, Ian Coe. We also have Acumen Fund, the Gates Foundation, Rockefeller, and then on the technical advisory side, we have McKinsey & Company, we have the IFC, and many others. You can take a look at the ANDI website. But I'd like to focus on the role of the small and growing businesses, because that's the heart of what ANDI our members try to assist. And basically, these are commercially viable businesses, typically from 5 to 20 employees, that have strong potential for growth, and thus are catalysts for creating economic, social, and environmental benefits. So we're looking at, in effect, a triple bottom line. The economic benefits are well known. As we all are aware, the small growing businesses create jobs. They also, because they're dynamic, they enable a faster wage growth. and they bring in new products, and they create wealth. Could I have the light on, please? Then on social benefits, well, the main, one of the main benefits they bring is it allows other social goods to be provided, and they also create social infrastructure. And we know the environmental benefits as well. Many of them are seriously, as we've seen from your case studies and your discussions, how you try to bring a lot of environmental benefits. Now, what we have seen so far in terms of the developing countries, the SME sector, which has a common, you could say, some common ground with the SGB sector, which is small and growing business, but they're not exactly the same. But we're using as proxy here the SME. The proportion of total employment that the SGB sector, the SME sector has for developing countries is relatively low compared to those in the developing countries. We're talking about 18% versus 57%. And in terms of contribution to GDP, developed countries have 51% to the SME sector. In developing countries, it's still much lower than 16. So there are many challenges that the SGB sector in the developing country faces, and this includes, first of all, the business environment, which has become tougher in a way. It also includes people and training, knowledge and market access, and capital. I think throughout this last 2 days, we've been covering a number of these challenges that we all face. Now, from Andy's perspective, our members essentially provide what you call the missing middle, the gap which is above what a microfinance provider can give, which is essentially over $25,000, all the way to $2 million. So that's sort of like the range, our sweet spot in terms of the sector, the small growing businesses we're looking at. Typically, there are a variety of them, as you can see, from commercial investments, social investments, social impact investments, and as well as to just grant for capacity building. And we will take a closer look at how our members, in a way, are present geographically. As we see it, you will notice that the concentration of the funds are significantly in Africa. Asia represents 32%. We're talking East Asia, South Asia, and West Asia. And when the main good news, however, that we are seeing is that the funds are starting to increase for the small and growing businesses. In 2008, there were 30 funds that were investment funds that were set up. This dropped significantly last year in 2009, but as of the first half of 2010, we had the same number of funds at 31. I want also to make a distinction between two different types of SGB funds. One which is just primarily focused on SGB businesses. That's the purple one. And then the blue would be more general private equity funds that have an involvement also in the SGB sector. Looking more closely at the last year and a half, we see that there has been a significant breakthrough in the SGB sector, in the sense that by the first half of 2010, there was, in terms of focused SGB funds, there was about 1.5 billion that has already been raised, which matches the 1.3 or over that. So that's the good news. And as a proportion of total investment funds raised, the SGB funds rose from 6% to 11%. Now, how does this distribution work out? Well, again, we see here Asia, ex-India, outside of India, grew from 13% to 16%, which is, again, a positive sign. But overall, including India as well, we would have a higher proportion, about 27%. Now, the increase in focus on SGB financing has been due to what? Well, there's been a common acknowledgement that it's the most vibrant sector, and here's a quotation from President Obama as well, mentions how it creates, how the SME sector creates space for small and medium businesses to create jobs. There's also a recognition by many of the multilateral agencies that they should put more resources into this sector. The IFC, the Food and Agricultural Organization, in terms of completing the value chain and how important the SGB sector is in that. And I believe there were sessions that we had here in this conference. And then, well, another highlight was the G20 SME Finance Challenge, which again, which our host, Korea, is very much involved with, which just happened a few weeks ago, and was brought in very many interesting ideas on SME finance. In fact, related to that, there were 3 members of ANSI that won the prize. This included Root Capital, Grassroots Business Fund, and the Entrepreneurial Finance Lab. So they were. It shows that there is innovation also in this whole in the SGB finance. Similarly, we're also seeing a lot of that in the technical assistance side. Small and growing businesses need 3 things to succeed: access to strong human capital, access to markets and info on markets, and access to capital. To achieve access to human capital, strong human capital and markets, well, technical assistance is very much needed. There are some of these technical TA advisors you probably have heard of, like CDC Development Solutions, TechnoServe, and McKinsey and Bain are also part of these consulting technical TA advisors. One area that we're focusing, where we're seeing a lot of innovation now, is at the value chain level, where we try to, well, a number of our members on the TA side are working closely with groups, industry groups, small growing businesses, and helping them to integrate their operations with the big multinationals. It's something similar to what one of the speakers mentioned, which Ashoka is also promoting, which is what you call the hybrid value chain. Value chain development, we see, has many innovations to come, and that would allow, we feel, small growing businesses to scale faster, professionalize, and to bring this whole sector to a new phase of development. Now, if we look at a 10-year perspective, the total funds that have been raised by small growing businesses is relatively small. We're talking about 10.5 billion. And these are just funds exclusively on SGB, while those for the emerging market private equity was 230 billion. But that's not surprising, given that we have learned from this session that social businesses have only started to really proliferate in the last 2 years. And therefore, really the case for setting up an investment fund dedicated to social growing businesses is a recent phenomenon. Well, what we therefore hope is that over the next 5 to 10 years, that middle sector, where the 10.5 billion will expand rapidly, and it would be great that all of us here can be part of this process, mainly through your contacts with the financial intermediaries in your own countries, with government, with multilateral agencies. A push from all of us would help to bring the sector to a new level and allow more funds to be available, which would help our whole sector grow. So in terms of challenges that we face, there are really 4 major challenges that we see. One for us as investors, it's the funding challenge, in the sense that the global financial environment is still in turmoil. We're still facing tough times, and I don't see that really improving until maybe 1 or 2 years from now. There's the proliferation of fundraising also, and therefore there's unclear prospects of proposing funds. And there's just the fact that this is a very young industry. Investors generally want to see proven track record before they will join the bandwagon. You always have this sort of dilemma. Nevertheless, I think from what we've seen from our members, there have been some successful closings, and we are very confident that there more funds will be coming in. Just in the U.S. 2 months ago at the Social Capital Market Conference, and there was for the first time an announcement that there was a fund of about $1.5 billion which would be raised, which is a first time that $1.5 billion would be raised for this SGB sector on a global basis. And then on the technical assistance level, the challenge here is really linking funding for technical assistance to SGB financing. There is currently also a shortage of funding for TA, and there is a true value added, we find, if one could avail of technical assistance, because it professionalizes the SGB sector and allows institutional investors to invest in them. There's also the challenge of scaling that the technical advisor faces. And then we all have the problem of people and talent. We're constantly, the sector needs many professionals. It being a new sector, there's always the concern that will it succeed and is there a bright future? Then there are also the challenges that we face in terms of demonstration and impact. Now, all of that is also being addressed now, or as I will discuss in the next presentation. We have these standards that are being developed by some of the ANDI members together with the Global Impact Investor Network that is putting a whole set of taxonomy and standards for evaluating social and environmental impact. So I would say that with these challenges, there are solutions to them, and we are looking forward to a bright future. Here, especially in Asia, which we've seen is the most dynamic region in the world, and we do hope to be able to work with many of you and grow our membership. Thank you.